So welcome to Comparative Politics. We're looking at semi-presidentialism. Today, this is most notably found in France and Russia. I am sorry I could not be with you all last week. I'm getting my strength back, and it's just I'm going through a tough time. But I'll be back on Tuesday. In-person instruction resumes on Tuesday, knocking on wood. And we'll hit Russia with both feet running. So Russia is a semi-presidential system. Kind of, sort of. Maybe it was back in the day, but we'll get into that later. So semi-presidentialism, and this is in your book, by the way, which you should be reading. As another reminder, you should be reading the book along with listening to my lectures, both online and in class. So, in a semi-presidential system, there is a directly elected president, there is an indirectly elected prime minister, and they share power. Now, in France, this is more true than in Russia. The president helps set policy, and again, in France, this is more true than in Russia. The prime minister executes the policy. It's still kind of, sort of, this is a mix between parliamentary system and a federal system like we have. The president still sort of acts as the head of state, but he does have political power, unlike the king now, King Charles. But, you know, the prime minister is still largely running the government, but they do so in a collaborative nature. So the president manages foreign policy. The prime minister does not do that. Which office holds more power depends on the country. Now, Macron, the current president of France, I don't know. He shares, I think, from what I've read and what I've seen, he seems to share. Putin does not. So the benefits of this system, there is a directly elected president. There is an indirectly elected prime minister, because remember, the prime minister is getting elected in the same way that they do in a parliamentary system. It's whoever can command the confidence of the parliament in the best way is the prime minister. So the leader of X party, okay, he, she, it can command confidence of the House. They're the leader, they're the prime minister. They share power, they share responsibilities. They create a public mandate, the president, and an indirectly elected office that may be supported by a coalition of parties. So the prime minister may be supported by the Socialist Party, the Green Party, the Labour Party, and be a member of the Liberal Democratic Party himself. I know. You know, I'm just pulling this off the top of my head. I know those parties' values don't necessarily align. But the public mandate thing, to explain that a little better, it's because the president in this system is directly elected. So there's a public mandate for him to, or her, to do what he or she ran on, what the election promises were, and the like. There is not for the prime minister, because the prime minister comes from the parliament. So the drawback here is that there's a possible conflict with the president and the prime minister over powers and responsibilities, who's doing what. And that happens because the system generally does not make it clear who's supposed to do what. There's a very broad set of guidelines, and again, the broad set of guidelines is what I'm giving you right now. these two countries in particular, France and Russia, they've been doing this a long time, but they don't necessarily follow the British model of tradition is as good as a law. So, yeah, conflict is possible. As I said, hybrid between parliamentary and presidential systems. These types of systems, the semi-presidential, have become more prevalent in the last 50 years, but still far less common than parliamentary and presidential systems. In a semi-presidential system, the power is divided between the head of state and the head of government. The prime minister being the head of government and a direct... Excuse me. No, I have that wrong. I have that wrong here. A prime minister and a directly elected head of state. The president is the head of state. I have that wrong. That is incorrect. Both exercise power. Again, the head of state in this system has power. He has power. He can act. And he doesn't have to act upon the advice of his ministers. He's not constrained as King Charles might be. He can do what he wants. And, you know, the prime minister has to kind of like it or lump it on many occasions. They have power, both of them. Presidents have fixed terms, so Macron... I'm having trouble remembering. I think France has 2 5-year terms, although I could very well be mistaken, and am open to the fact that I am probably wrong. Presidents, though, have fixed terms. The prime minister, though, does not. The prime minister is subject to the confidence of the legislature. The prime minister is subject also, in some cases, to the confidence of the president as well. If the president loses confidence in the prime minister, in some cases, the prime minister can be let go. Or, in a less nice way of saying it, fired. Now, as I've said, the division of power between the head of state and the PM really depends on the country. France, yes, there is a division of power. Russia, not so much. Russia might go back to a division of power if Putin is ever not the president. But in some cases, the prime minister is relatively independent from the... I swear I edit these, and I always miss something. From the president. From the president. The president exercises important powers. The president, though, also has limited control over the prime minister. But in other cases, the prime minister is beholden to the legislature and to the president. So he has to make both happy. And in those situations, the president has greater authority. And we're spelling over, just VR now, over the selection, removal, and activity of the prime minister. And in both cases, the president holds power independently of the legislature. Yet, this person also shares powers with a prime minister. So the president doesn't have to answer to a legislature or anybody else but the voters who elected him, her, it. But they share power just the same. All right, Victoria was interested in what I was talking about, so she's come to help us record the rest of this. So, semi-presidential systems really reflect the old distinction between reign and rule that had existed under monarchies. So again, you know, the president reigns in that he is the head of state, he's the father of the nation, so to speak. And the prime minister rules like the old prime minister, the prime ministers of old, and that they execute government policies. Hi. So presidents set forth policies oftentimes, but they expect the prime minister to translate those policies into legislation and ensure really that it's passed in the legislature. So the president really depends on the prime minister. The president really depends on the prime minister to act and to pass the agenda in the legislature. Okay. You have lost interest already, haven't you? Yes, you have. So presidents take the lead in foreign policy. The prime minister does not do that. The prime minister, I mean, he might be around. He might, come when the King of Spain visits France or something like that, but he's not taking the lead. The president serves as commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He represents the country in international relations. That's usually a given. Not usually, that's a given. So, the most prominent semi-presidential systems, like in France, as we've mentioned, place most of the power in the hands of the president, while the PM, the prime minister, plays a supporting role. And I take some issue with that because that's really all a matter of personalities. If I'm, the prime minister and my wife is the president of France, I don't even know if that would be allowed. And I happen to have a stronger personality than my wife. I'm not saying that I do, but I might have more power. It's just really a matter of personality and just an exercise in humanity in that case. So in a semi-presidential system, the role of the judiciary varies. The independence of constitutional courts is often limited because they're appointed by the president. The president gets to stack the courts as he sees fit. At the same time, and we're spelling presidents in a weird way again, conflicts between presidents and prime ministers, a lack of clarity over which executive has what power, and that's on a few occasions it's created the opportunity for more judicial authority. Because the president and the prime minister are out of commission because they're fighting. So what's left? The courts. Hi. So since the collapse of communism, semi-presidentialism is spread into, and we're spelling several, like says without the AL, into several former Soviet republics with limited success, most notably Russia, and it's also the form of government in a few other countries like Taiwan, Sri Lanka, Mali. Taiwan, it works. Sri Lanka and Mali, and that is it. So we are going to start in next on the history of Russia.